Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I stand with you guys every show, you know? And today's show is great because we're here together.
All three of us are here.
You know, so
we've been doing that a little more lately, Ted,
Yeah.
so you can't give us too much of a hard time here, but... Anyways, before we get into the card today, but I'm going to stop Ted in the middle of his pun going. I'm going to, before we talk about the card, let's talk about ways that you can connect with Card Talk. We obviously have the pod and the YouTube channel where we release our audio and video episodes, which are the same things. But over at the blog, cardtalk2018.com, Matt reviews the card pool one card at a time and does the same card that we do on the pod here. So you can go over and read what he has to say. Many times he has a different or unique take on cards, and sometimes picks up on things that we don't, or picks up a little something different.
Sometimes he plays the cards and we don't.
Yeah, right. Sometimes he just guesses, but, you know, whatever. We also have Second Breakfast, where Micah plays a scenario, and he's got different deck restrictions that he uses for that, and plays different scenarios every other week or so. And then we also have a Patreon where you guys can become patrons of the show. If you like what we do here, all the content that we're putting out every week, please join our Patreon. And this year we have some swag that we're going to give out. So you need to sign up quick over at patreon.com/cardtalk2018. At the $5 level, you get some swag, and it's for new and veteran players alike. We haven't quite seen something like this in the community, so, we're hoping everybody loves what's going on with our swag. So having said that, Grant, can you tell us what the card... I see you're getting ready there. Grant is actually... Look, you can see his face. Anybody who's watching the YouTube video, you can see his face there. So he was just doing some grooming earlier. He was combing his beard out, so that was good. Here he comes. Yeah, there's his beard brush. He needs it because how awesome this card is. So, Grant, go ahead. What's the card?
We are going back to the core set, as we've done in the previous however many episodes we've done lately of the core set. We are going to do the Tactics Zero Cost event, Stand Together, which has the action, choose a player. That player may declare any number of his eligible characters as defenders against each enemy attacking him this phase.
Wow.
Yay. So before we get into this card, Ted, our resident rules expert.
That I am.
Yes.
David, that I am. I've
so
never made a mistake that I think you could find recorded on this podcast. That's for sure.
Or at least made it into the final cut.
Absolutely.
How does this card work from a rules point of view?
Well, it says you can declare any number of characters as your defenders. So that could be, obviously, you're playing it to use at least two, but it could be 2, 3, 4. You're going to declare, so let's say you have 3 characters and they have defenses of 2, 2, and 1 because you're defending against maybe a 7 strength attack. So you exhaust all of them, adding up their defenses to 5. You'll have 2 damage left over in this example. You will pick a single character to take all of that spillover damage, which in my example is 2.
Okay, so that's good. Okay, so how often do you guys use this card, Grant?
I have never used this card. I am, in the entire time I've been playing the game, I have never sat down and used this card. not because it's bad, but because I just don't have the feeling of needing it. It's not something that actually states, oh yes, I need this for this enemy. Generally speaking, if I've got a big enemy coming down to us, I usually have a feint in hand, which is probably better than using stand together and exhausting all your cards to take that hit.
Yeah. Ted, when do you use this? How often do you use this card?
So I haven't played it recently, shall I say? What year did the core set come out?
2011.
That's about the last time I think I played it. It's the thing is about it is there's a couple things that can just sort of boost your defense. And Grant kind of nailed it, like feint out of the core set. Now, obviously, if that's you want to have more things in your deck to defend, but just sort of as the card pool has progressed, we've gotten larger defenders. Baragon really changed the game,
right?
But you can do some neat things with this card. Most commonly, when I have seen it played, as far as combos and stuff like that, is you use it in conjunction with a hero that maybe has Spear of the Citadel and Gondorian Spearmen that may also have Spear of the Citadel, or some character with a spear. And all of those characters have a reaction ability when they're declared as defenders. And that's probably the best use of this card. So if you have 2 Gondorian Spearmen, or let's say you have 3, and you play stand together and you declare all 3 of them as defenders, you'll trigger their responses all at the same time. So you'll just do 3 damage back, 1 for each spearman.
Yeah. And if you have a Spear of the Citadel on each of those spearmen, you can do 6 damage.
Yeah, you could.
Because the Spear of the Citadel is a 2-cost tactics attachment that does 1 damage. It turns your character into a Gondorian Spearman, basically. It does 1 damage upon declaring the defense. And I don't really play this card either. I will add only one other option, is that there is cards that don't exhaust to defend. So what is it? The Vigilant Dunedain or the Watcher of the Brunian? Is that who it is?
Yeah. He's out of the second set. He's a Sentinel, and he doesn't exhaust, and then you have to discard a card or discard him or something like that.
Does the Vigilant Dunedain also not exhaust to defend, or does it not exhaust to attack? I think it doesn't exhaust to defend.
I believe it doesn't exhaust to defend as long as you have the side quest in your victory display, or just I think it's any side quest.
Yeah. So so there's a couple of those that you could group defend something and then defend some individual things, and not lose your Watchers of the Brunian or your Vigilant Dunedain if you are, if you have that working out, if you don't want to lose them. The Watcher of the Brunian has a cost. I think you have to discard, because it's an Noldor, so you have to discard a card to keep it around if you want. So
the Vigilant Dunedain is, while there's a side quest in the victory display, the Vigilant Dunedain does not exhaust to defend.
Yep. Yeah. So that's kind of neat. So you can defend. You can add it, and it's got a 2 defense, right? As its base, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can. Yeah, it's reasonable. I think the other thing that kind of caused this card to get faded out is that
it's just not very good.
It's not great. And the thing is about defenses is you want something that's consistent, right?
Right.
And this is not a consistent effect because it requires you to have more than one character ready for defending. It's not like it's hard to build around it. And if you do want to build around that strategy, because there are plenty of scenarios in the game that have large attackers. Yeah. That they eat trolls that attack for 6, 7, even the core set, right? The hill troll attacks for 6.
Right.
That's a lot. So if you want to build around it consistently, there's a hero. I'll mention Hero Dory, who we had an episode on, but he has a very similar effect to this card where you exhaust him and he adds his defense to a singular character.
Right.
Now that's not as, this card lets you do as many as you want to. You know, I suppose this is a 0 cost event. If you were playing a Council of the Wise deck, you could squeak out, you know, you could like draw a card,
right,
or gain a resource from playing this card for 0. I could
and you can just still choose one defender, right? Like
that's true. Yeah.
Right.
It says you choose up, so you could play it just kind of to gain a resource out of it.
Right.
And then if you want the benefit because you need to defend a big attack, then right, you have it. So I could see a case there. But beyond that, trying to think of other characters. Actually, one of your favorite Sylvans doesn't exhaust to defend, right?
The defender of the Nath or whatever.
I was thinking of the Greenwood Defender. He's the one that when he enters, when he enters play, he doesn't exhaust that turn.
He doesn't exhaust until the end of the round.
Right. Okay.
Which I still think is funny because then he's exhausted at the end of the round. Right. He defends however much you want him. That's great. But then he exhausts at the end of the round, and then you can't do anything with him the next round. Yeah. So it's kind of weird, but
we'll do a show on him if we have an
if we have time.
So that's kind of it.
Join us next week as we talk about the Greenwood Defender.
I haven't played it since the core set because I just want something a little more consistent. And even out of the core set, if there's Feint, as Grant mentioned, there's Blade Mastery will up your defense by 1, which I feel
also Thicket of Spears, which cancels all attacks made by enemies engaged with you.
Yeah.
Sure, it's got a pretty steep cost of having to pay 3 tactics resources from 3 different heroes, but if you're running a mono tactics deck, that's happening quite a bit lately with the introduction of 3 hunters and so many other basically mono sphere cards. It's quite easy to pull off.
Yep. So it's just not, like I said, it's not very consistent. That's kind of all I have to say about the card itself.
I'm gonna say that here's the problem with this is that you have to exhaust the allies, right? And so if you're trying to defend a big attack, you're probably exhausting 3 or 4 allies because you don't want your allies to die. But now you can't do anything with that enemy that's engaged with you because all your allies are exhausted, and typically you end up with like a net no gain because the next round that enemy is still engaged with you, and now you're back with your weenie allies still doing nothing for you. So you might as well chump it and plink it a few times.
That's the argument. Is it's kind of like, well, if the attack is so big that your hero can't defend it, you're just kind of better off. I guess it would, right. This card could save you at the cost of exhausting multiple characters. It could could prevent you from throwing away an ally, I guess. So, but I just feel like playing a 1-cost ally like a Snowborn Scout to chump is stronger than this card for 0.
Right. I mean, it does say you can pick any eligible characters, so you could group defend with heroes like Erkenbrand that gets rid of shadow effects, like as long as you can ready and things like that. But, I still don't think you come out ahead most of the time. It's kind of super nichey to play, but I don't know. It's just not right. Like, it's,
yeah.
I think there's other 0 cost things that you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And
or 1 cost,
Yeah. Like I said, aside from like if you're playing the Gondorian Spearmen or these direct damage. I'm trying to think of other characters that maybe have, as you mentioned, there's other characters that do things when they're defending. And so I mean, you could do something with, for example, Grant's favorite hero of all time, Grimbeorn, right? He defends, and then he gets to spend a resource to attack back. And you could declare multiple defenders and have somebody, to boost his defense, or have somebody else take the damage. But there's just sort of, I think, other ways to deal with it, even like an honor guard ally that lets you prevent 1 damage,
right,
by exhausting him. There's just a lot of other options,
right.
I
think that this card started off not being super strong, and with the expansion of the card pool, even just beyond the core set, it just really went downhill, because there's just so many better options. Here's how I know it's not necessarily a super strong card. Number one, the people that I talk to about the card game don't play this very often. And number two, it's an effect that was never duplicated. Like, there's no hero that's like, pick another ally, or pick an ally you control and have that join the defense.
The closest we got is the Dory, right?
Right.
And then the thing, and then you just get it consistently, get a consistent effect to do that.
And with all due respect to Aaron Fishbaugh, who loves Dory, Dory's effect is not very good, right? You might as well just use him as a defender, right? Instead of exhausting to toss his defense. Again, there's cases to use Dory, but not very often.
Yeah. I'll mention, though, like, if you do pull off the little combo I talked about with Gondorian Spearmen, if something comes out, an enemy comes out, let's say you have Thalin in your deck, right? Thalin does a damage to an enemy, and then you have 2 Gondorian Spearmens, each with a Spear of the Citadel,
right?
And then you play this, and you exhaust both of them, you deal 4 damage back, plus 1 from Thalin. You just killed a 5 hit point enemy without attacking?
Right.
That's cool. So if you use it for that combo, it's kind of neat, and it feels good, and we
like
watch
your
someone do it.
5-card combo going.
Yes. No, I didn't say but it's a piece of that whole deck,
right?
Right, because you're
like
having
direct
many
damage sort of thing.
Right. I think it's a piece of that deck, and you're playing lots of other things. Yeah, it requires a lot, but you're going to have maybe Haldir or Argolat. You're going to have a bunch of other things.
Right.
So when that comes out, it's kind of cool to see it happen.
Right.
And outside of that, just, So.
What about the art on this card?
So, interesting you bring that up. It features kind of short hair Aragorn. And
like musculature Aragorn too.
Yeah, it's like the first thing people typically notice.
Right.
And the other thing I'll point out is this art is from another Fantasy Flight Lord of the Rings game.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. I am trying to remember the title, and I'll have to maybe see if I can look it up here.
Okay.
But they just took that art. It's on the cover of that game. And it's just this card now.
That's funny. I would have never been able to pick up on that.
I remember because I saw it, in some store.
So the artist here is Darkin. And Darkin, that person, I don't know if it's he, she, or a company or whatever, but did a few core set cards. So I think it did. They did. What is it? Deep Knowledge. Is that the one? The one that in the core set that gives you Shadow Control lore card. Anyways, but so I mean, having said that, I don't.
What about Dark Knowledge?
Dark Knowledge, right?
Yeah, Deep Knowledge is when you draw 2 cards for 2 threat.
Yeah, Deep Knowledge is the good one. Stand Together, the art is not my favorite. I mean, it's obvious that it's, the battle, the 300s battle of the orcs at the seat of Amon Hen, the seat of seeing and stuff like that, but I don't know. I mean, at least that's what I would assume it is, because there's just a lot of orcs, and it's Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn, or at least Army Ranger Aragorn.
Yeah, I wish I could. I don't remember the name of the game, and I can't seem to find it, but I remember very distinctly being like, "Oh, it's the cover of this other game."
Yeah.
So,
Grant, what do you think of the art?
It's all right. It's not the best art that I've seen, but it could have been a lot worse.
Could always be worse.
It could always be worse.
Exactly. Could always be worse.
Yeah. Well, should we ring this guy?
Yeah, let's ring it up.
Okay. For anybody who doesn't know, or maybe this is your first show, or maybe you've forgotten, I don't know. But we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we bring a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one card to rule them all, and a 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it was made. So, Grant, we haven't heard from you in a while. So, what do you think of Stand Together?
9 rings.
Okay. Ted?
Ooh, boy. I'm wondering if this.
He's thinking about it. He's thinking about it.
Yeah. I think I'll throw it into the 9. It's down there. Is it the worst in the card pool? Arguably, it just doesn't hit the table. But yeah, I think Grant nailed it. 9.
Yeah. I'm gonna stick with a 9 as well. I think it has like a little bit of niche use, but I just don't think anybody's playing this card. It's just not a thing.
Outside of that couple things we talked about, and even then, that's not common.
Yeah. Well, everybody, thanks so much for everybody who has become new patrons or returning patrons for the swag this year, and keep letting us know how you feel about the cards and about the content, and join us again as we talk about more cards in the game. See you later. See you next week. Have a great day.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.